We meet so many jokers and clowns on this channel. So many people who take their denial, deceit, and delusion into epic levels. Into comic levels. Most of the people we're talking about here are reporters. Being the first reporter, or the first writer, the first person I think of when we think about that, maybe because it's the latest, is the lovely Ms. Pippa Biddle. Pippa Biddle's for the HuffPo, and she also writes for Wired magazine on occasion. And a few months ago, Pippa decided that she was going to do a story about how Colin Flaherty uses music to amplify, to make more appealing his hate speech. We documented how Pippa is a clown, a know-nothing, who says something without backing anything up. So she was at the top of our list. But what about Fat Boy? What about Fat Boy at the Active Self-Deception website? It's weird. When you think about self-protection, I think of two things right away. First thing I think of is, one, don't go picking fights with people needlessly. And two, you've got to be real. You've got to have a realistic view of the world, or your own delusion will kill you. Well, that's what the Fat Boy John over at Active Self-Deception was doing when he violated both of those rules. Some of our enthusiastic viewers here also used to subscribe to that channel. They'd go over there and they'd go, "Hey, Fat Boy, what do you think about Colin? He does all these videos about black violence, black on white crime. How it's wildly out of proportion. Now there's an enormous amount of black on white hostility. Also black on Asian, black on young, black on old, black on gay, black on straight, black on kittens, black on puppies, black on turtles. Hey, John, what do you think about that, John?" So John started telling people that anybody who liked Colin could not like him because Colin was a very, 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 very bad person. I let it go for a while. Then we made a reply to it. But then the Fat Boys minions started coming over here and started repeating what the Fat Boy said, that we're bad people and we shouldn't say anything about anything because we're bad people. Here's the thing. I don't know why the Fat Boy doesn't know this. I don't know why his followers don't know this. We're the easiest channel on YouTube to shut down. The easiest. We're the easiest to prove wrong. Yet nobody seems to be able to do it. Fat Boy says we're a bad person. We're bad people. What he doesn't say is anything about our central thesis here, which is, man, there's a lot of black hostility that leads to a lot of black violence, some of it directed at white people. We do videos on that all day long. We do videos in the United States of America. If we ever get invaded by a whole bunch of people from Brazil, I'll go subscribe to the Fat Boy's channel because that's mostly where a lot of his videos come from. But in the meantime, if Fat Boy or Pippa, they want to shut us down, just prove us wrong. Good Lord, how easy would that be to do? Show me it's not happening. Show me white people deserve it. Show me white people do it too. Come on, Fat Boy. Yeah, well, I guess Fat Boy's busy with other stuff now on his Active Self-Deception channel. But when I think of jokers and clowns who are occupying high stations in the journalistic firmament, well, you don't get much higher than the New Yorker magazine. This is a magazine that's is known for the last 7,500 years, publishing, the biggest and brightest voices in journalism. They published one of my favorite books, Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. That's how that book got started. They gave Truman Capote some money, sent him on a plane out to Kansas and say, "Hey, write a book about that family that got killed by those two drifters." And he did. And when he did it, he invented a new kind of journalism. Without Truman Capote, there is no Tom Wolfe. Without Tom Wolfe, there is no Hunter Thompson. That's the gradation. So anyway, Evan Osnos sitting up in his chair, up in the clouds on the World Trade Center, and he won an article a little while ago. He decreed that Colin is a bad person for making up all those stories about the knockout game, because I just asked Professor Mike King at some little college nobody ever heard about, and he said, damn it, he looked and looked and looked and looked. He couldn't even find one example. Colin's making the whole thing up. And what's worse? Well, what's really, really bad is Colin had those people from Fox News eating out of the palm of his hand. And guess what? We even think Colin had Donald Trump eating out of the palm of his hand. I think I'm going to claim this. I'm going to claim this without fear of anybody contradicting it. I think Evan Osnos set a record for more errors in a short amount of space when he wrote that little segment about me and that big story he wrote about Donald Trump. I think he had like 10 errors in there. Remember, this is a magazine, this was a magazine that kind of invented the construction of, well, it depends, what the meaning of the word is. It's famous for having these really famous authors, labor over these manuscripts, go over again and again. They send them to the New Yorker. They come back with, hundreds and hundreds of little red marks and checks and questions and editing marks. Above all, they had fact checkers. And so now Evan Osnos is sitting there scratching his head going, man, I can't figure out why anybody would say that black people go around attacking white people for no reason whatsoever. It just doesn't happen, Colin. No matter how many videos you make, no matter how many books you write, no matter how many big video compilations of the knockout game you make, we're just not going to believe it. What about that story that just came? What about this story? What about this video? One of the fellas is sitting inside of a convenience store. A lovely white girl started walking up to the convenience store. This guy walked out of the door as if he was going to hold the door. And on video, we see him punch her in the face. It is what it is. Oh, Colin, you don't have any proof. You don't have any proof that of the hate crime. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But not before we head out to Cleveland. See the same thing. Here they kind of marginalize. A gang member is accused of punching a woman because she was white, is charged with a hate crime. Who gives a damn if it's a hate crime or not? This idiot actually said he hated white people. Well, you don't even, why do you have to say that? If you go around punching people and robbing people, it's wildly out of proportion, black on white as opposed to white on black, there's something going on besides a coincidence. People like Evan Osnos, people like Pippa Biddle, people like Fat Boy John, at active self-deception. Their only reply is something very, very similar to what the President of the United States told the Prince. Where's he the Prince of? Prince of, I don't know. He's the Prince of Wales, the Prince of York. I don't know. Don't even care. Anyway, Prince Harry told Prince Harry, well, let's listen to what he told Prince Harry, because this is basically what everybody tells us when we bring up this topic of black criminality wildly out of proportion.
One of the dangers of the internet is that people can have entirely different realities. They can be just cocooned in information that reinforces their current biases.
It's amazing that somebody gets killed in Ferguson. A guy lunges for a cop's gun after beating a store clerk, lunges for the cop's gun, gets out. The guy's 6'4", a couple of 100 pounds. He's a direct threat to this cop. Cop draws down on him. All of a sudden, everybody and kills him when the guy starts charging him, attacking him again. And everybody invented this lie about hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. That was a reason for the President of the United States to start talking about all this white racism and the bad relations between white people and black people, how white people, especially cops, are always picking on black people for no reason whatsoever. I mean, look at Ferguson. The President of the United States sent three, count them, three emissaries to that funeral. That doesn't count the people from the Department of Justice, the community activists that went to Ferguson to kind of smooth things out. How come every time one of these teams of community activists from the Department of Justice, a little known group, how come every time one of those guys, some of these guys show up to smooth things out, things always blew up? Ferguson, Milwaukee, Charlotte, those are three examples right there. And now the president is accusing us of cherry picking. He's accusing us of confirmation bias. When every single member of his administration, the only qualification you had to be one of the 12,000 people he hired to run the federal government was you had to believe that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And anything else you just had to completely ignore. You had to ignore the enormous disparity. You had to ignore the enormous violence among black people in schools. You had to ignore it on the streets. You had to ignore this enormous level of black criminality that put black people in prison for lots and lots of damn good reasons. Guess the president never saw that Richard Pryor bit where Richard Pryor did a movie, a prison movie with Gene Wilder. They went out to Arizona, and Richard Pryor describes how he was down with the cause. He wanted to meet the brothers, tell them how they weren't in there for the right reason. I think the punchline is Richard Pryor met a murderer. He goes, "Man, why'd you kill those people?" The murderer says, "They was home." And Richard Pryor ends the bit by going, "Thank God for prisons." Now we have the former president of the United States reminding us that anybody that looks at this transparently obvious level of black criminality that we see every damn day all over the country, wildly out of proportion. The president reminds us, he's trying to gaslight us. Remember that movie, Gaslight? Man, I remember the first time I heard that, I didn't know what it was. Then I went to look it up. Gaslight, it's a movie. I think Ingrid Bergman was the star of it. I think she might have been an heiress, and they were trying to make her believe that she was crazy. So she'd go into in her house, maybe a picture would be moved, or this would disappear, or that would reappear, and she would say, "Hey, what's that doing there?" And they'd go, and somebody would say, "Oh, that's been there the whole time." Well, what happened to that picture? What picture? So the president is trying to gaslight us, along with Pippa Biddle, along with Fat Boy John, along with Evan Osnos, trying to make us believe what we just saw in these two stories. It's cherry picking, Colin. It's just your confirmation bias. And that's true of the hundreds and other cases just like that you've documented. We're going to do a story soon about Chicago, where violent crime in the Loop in Chicago has tripled in the last 2 years. Violent crime in Boys Town, the gay neighborhood, that's also skyrocketing. I mean, the rich people that live in the Loop, the rich people that live on the Magnificent Mile, and the gay people who live in Boys Town and Wrigleyville, they are all just targets of black criminality over and over and over. And yet they have a state's attorney, a Cook County attorney, who now is main goal. Her main goal now is to make sure black people do not go to prison. So black crime in some neighborhoods of Chicago is at all-time high, but the black prison population, the black jail population is at all-time low. Because everybody knows putting a black person in jail criminalizes them. Catching a black person committing a crime somehow causes them to have committed that crime. I'm not making this up. But the people who do make up these little fairy tales, at least they're not making the black kids angry.